are going to be working another psalm spell today, and today we are on Psalm 119, Vow. And traditionally, this is stated as being a psalm that's used to inspire others to serve you. Now, it's real important that you understand that it's to inspire others to serve you, not to force others to serve you. So this is a psalm that we use to find inspiration, to be an inspiring influence on others. Okay? So the way we do these psalms is very simple. We read the chosen psalm all the way through once without stopping out loud, and that's called an incantation. And then we go back through the psalm slowly, and we go through each verse one at a time, and we search and dig and hunt and find inner meanings for each of the psalms. And by searching and digging and contemplating these inner meanings, we actually are planting those seeds, those thought seeds, into our deep mind. And they literally, and I mean literally, take root and grow and bear fruit after their own kind. And so we will do that together today with Psalm 119, Vow. Let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord, even thy salvation according to thy word. So shall I have wherewith to answer him that reproacheth me, for I trust in thy word. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in thy judgments. So shall I keep thy law continually forever and ever, and I walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts. I will speak of thy testimonies also before kings, and will not be ashamed. And I will delight myself in thy commandments, which I have loved. My hands also will I lift up unto thy commandments, which I have loved, and I will meditate in thy statutes. All right, so now we are going to go through and work the magic. Here we go. All right, so let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord. Okay, so who's the Lord? Well, the Lord is, for us, the Lord of these Psalms is not some deity up in the sky. It's not some father figure or some mother figure that's separate from us, that's doling out punishments or rewards or whatever they do, whatever those deities do. For us, the Lord represents the life principle itself, the source of all life. So this means that there's only one. There's one power, there's one source, there's one substance in all of the universe. There's one principle. And this source, this power is the Lord. That's what we're addressing in the Psalms. If you were looking at the tree of life, it would be called Kether, or the crown. So it's pre-gender, and there's no separation. There's only one. And what's important to understand before we move into the psalm is what some of the qualities of what that Lord is, what God is. So the qualities of infinite life or divine life, the principle of life itself, you can think about that as there's only one life, right? So it's what's beating your heart. It's what's causing you to breathe. It's what's making the planet revolve around the sun. It's what causes babies to grow out of embryos, plants to grow out of seeds, etc., etc., etc. There's only one. There's nothing to oppose it. It's all powerful. There's no opposing force to this force. So there's nothing to oppose it. So if God is for us, who can be against us, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's who we're addressing when we say, let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord. So the mercies of God, we are immediately on that fourth sphere of the tree of life, the sphere of mercy. And remember, mercy is grace, and it's all benefic. So if you think of Jupiter, that's the force. So in a birth chart, Jupiter kind of undoes a lot of the problems of other planets. And so that's what this is, the let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord. No matter what you think you've done, no matter where you've come from, God doesn't care. God's mercies are for you because of who you are. God made you out of pure love. God loves you just as much now as God loved you when God, first conceived of you, even though it didn't happen in time. And so nothing you can do will make that stop happening. And therefore, God's mercies are also always available to you, but you must choose to ask for them to come unto you because we have free will. So that's what we're doing now. Let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord, even thy salvation. So that's the sixth sphere on the tree of life. Salvation means that do for me that which I cannot do for myself, and deliver me out of my problems and into your will for me, which is utter and pure success. According to thy word, or according to thy will, is what the word of God means. So that's what that first verse can say to us. Let thy mercies come also unto me, O Lord, even thy salvation, according to thy word. This next verse says, so shall I have wherewith to answer him that reproacheth me, for I trust in thy word. So how do you answer what reproaches you within you? Again, this is most important, not so much what's going on outside the world, but what's going on inside of us. So those thought forms within us that reproach us, that's that little accuser inside of us that's always bitching and moaning about ourselves or about other people. So how do you respond to that? You ask. You have wherewith to answer that by asking God to answer it for you on your behalf. That's where that grace comes in. That's where that mercy comes in. You do it. I can't do it. For I trust in thy word. So we trust in the will of God. The will of God is sufficient enough to deliver us from the problems which are which come from these reproaching ideas within our own selves. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in thy judgments. Now, when we say something like, take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, God would never take the word of truth out of your mouth. It's the same kind of idea, the way that they say things in these ancient biblical texts to give kind of emphasis. So it's just like in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation. Well, why would God lead you into temptation? That would never happen. It means lead us out of temptation. So take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth means please make sure to help me always have the word of truth in my mouth. I'm only going to speak truth. Well, what is speaking truth? Speaking truth doesn't necessarily mean speaking the facts, because you can speak the facts and still not speak the truth. Speaking the truth means that the way God sees things is the way I want to speak. So you may, like today when I was talking about, or before I started this psalm spell, I was talking about how I had some resentment that I needed to overcome. That's the word of truth. I had to keep reminding myself, I don't want this resentment. I want to be released from it. That's speaking the word of truth. For I have hoped in thy judgments. Hoping in the judgments doesn't mean I hope God's judgments are nice, so he doesn't mean do something mean to me. Hoping in thy judgments means I have faith that God's judgment always brings me what I need, always brings me joy, always brings me everything good. All good comes from God's judgment. Why? Because God created everything. So everything that is real, God looks at and says, that's good. Everything that's not real, God doesn't even look at it. So therefore, if God's judgments are what we want, because God's judgments make sure that everything good comes to us and everything that's not good is annihilated because it doesn't really exist. It doesn't really exist from God's point of view. And we want God's point of view to be that which is our experience. And that happens through what's called God's judgments. So shall I keep thy law continually forever and ever. How do you keep the law of God? You keep the law of God by contemplating the qualities of God. Whatever your problems are, that means that you're thinking about those instead of God's qualities. If you trained your mind to move out of obsessing over the problem and then with thinking of the qualities of God, then you bet your bottom dollar that everybody around you is going to be inspired to help you. Yes, that's going to happen. All right. And I walk at liberty, for I seek thy precepts. Okay, so I walk at liberty. I'm free. God created us free. God created us completely free. You can think anything you want. You don't want to think like God? You can think like other things. You can have all kinds of fearful experiences if that's what you want. You can think you're separate. You can think you're alone. You can think you're vulnerable. You can think that you're poor. You can think you're sick. You can think you're old. You can think anything you want to think. If you want, you're at liberty. You're walking at liberty. But here it says, but since I'm at liberty, I also have the liberty to seek God's precepts. In other words, I can choose to think of the qualities of God instead of these other thoughts that I'm creating all on my own. And when I do that, then I get the benefits of those thoughts. In other words, everything in my life moves into perfection, which is what is my birthright. I will speak of thy testimonies also before kings and will not be ashamed. Okay, so internally, that means all of those thought forms within you that are fearful, the things that you're afraid of, well, you can look straight at them and you can speak God's testimonies. So let's say you're afraid of your home being foreclosed. Well, you can look and say, instead of I'm afraid, you can say, well, God didn't create foreclosure. God doesn't have financial poverty. God didn't create those things, and I want what God created, not what I created through the world, not what the world is creating. I want what God creates. So therefore, I want God to take my home. I want God to take my money. I want God to show me what God's thoughts of those things are. So that's what that means. Speaking of thy testimonies also before kings, not being ashamed. Not being ashamed meaning I'm not going to, how shameful is it to get your home foreclosed? Well, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed that I have money problems. I'm not ashamed that I've made mistakes in the past. I'm not ashamed that I've done horrible things in my past. I'm not ashamed because that's my past and that's not who I am now. So all those guilt thoughts in my mind and fear thoughts in my mind that are always accusing me, instead of listening to those, I am now shifting from thinking about that to thinking about these qualities of God instead. And then I watch all of those problems start to dissolve before my very eyes. And that is how you inspire people. They watch you and then they get inspired. And believe me, they want to help you. They want to help you because they want to be on the same beam as you. And I will delight myself in thy commandments, which I have loved. Again, delighting in thinking about what the qualities of God are. Loving that more than your problems. Loving the qualities of God more than your problems. That's the trick to life. And it shows you how to do that right here in these spells. My hands also will I lift up unto thy commandments, which I have loved, and I will meditate in thy statutes. So my hands are lifted up. If you think about your hands are how you create things. Your hands are how you have freedom in the world. You have opposable thumbs. You are able to make and fashion and mold things with your hands. If you lift those hands up, then you are saying, I want you to create through me and as me, rather than me trying to create as a separate self. So I lift up my hands to thy commandments. So I want what I create in my world to be a reflection of all those qualities of God, which I love, which I have loved, it says, but which I love, and I will meditate in thy statutes. That means that when I think, everything is a meditation. So what I think about, I'm going to remind myself again and again and again, no matter how tempted I am to think in terms of fearful thoughts or angry thoughts or all those other kinds of thoughts, I'm going to think again and again to return my mind to the statutes of God, meaning just thinking about the qualities of God. Now there is a divine qualities video or a qualities of God video where we go into each of those qualities, well, not each of them, but a lot of them, and that's a good one. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, you can find that on my YouTube channel. Okay, it's awesome to work with you. I really am grateful for you being here, and I can't wait to work with you again. And until that time, blessed be.